Welcome to the Fitness Industry Council of Canada webinar, the pulse of Canadian fitness business. Brought to you by our sponsors including Matrix, ISOFIT, Stay Above Nutrition, and Zoom Media. So it's great to have people joining us today. I know we've got people literally coast to coast in Canada, and it's always great to have people joining us for these webinars. And if you haven't noticed, when you read our weekly FitBiz weekly newsletter, with Graham and Lauren and Erin, as well as our monthly Fitness Industry Council newsletter that Erin drives. We do have a new YouTube channel, so please check out the details in the newsletter where you can find the recordings of not only this webinar, but our previous webinars as well. And soon, within the next couple of months, you will also see that we've got a podcast that is currently being recorded, and we will alert you to those episodes when they are available. But it is certainly, our pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, really focused on heart health. And we've got an absolute expert, to chat with us about heart health and cardiac clinical exercise in our current president of the Fitness Industry Council, Sara Gilbert. But before we get to Sara, I do want to acknowledge and recognize our many suppliers and sponsors of the Fitness Industry Council of Canada. And in particular,
I don't want to turn on the.
Sorry if I'm going to mute those that are speaking. It is really a great pleasure for us to acknowledge and thank the many sponsors that we do have at the Fitness Industry Council of Canada. In particular, those that you can see that I'm recognizing here this month. Our webinar is being brought to you by our premier sponsor, Matrix, our gold level sponsor, ISOFIT, our silver level sponsor, Stay Above Nutrition, and bronze level sponsor, Zoom Media. Without these sponsors, we couldn't do all of the advocacy work that we do, and we greatly appreciate the support of all of our sponsors. So, as noted earlier, we're really excited to have this conversation with Sara. Sara is truly an expert in this area. If you aren't familiar with her background, she did start as an exercise physiologist and kinesiologist in the hospital sector, working in cardiac rehab. And her story is one of resilience, perseverance, and absolute passion for helping those living with chronic conditions to really thrive through the application of exercise. So today's webinar is going to be a little bit of a tag team effort between myself and Erin Phelan, who is our Director of Marketing and Communications here at the Fitness Industry Council of Canada. And we're going to take some turns asking Sara some key questions. So I will turn things over to Erin.
Well, Sara, it's been many years.
How we started?
This is how Sara and I, as a background to anyone coming around, long before Sara and I were ever involved in the FIC, we had this conversation probably 15 years ago, didn't we, Sara?
Yeah.
It's coming close to that. And it's been such a privilege to watch you grow and to expand and to watch Live Well exercise clinics expand. And then you take on this role as the president of the FIC. So let's dive right into what the topic of the webinar was, which is the sort of 5 strategies, the 5 things that gyms really need to consider when you're catering to an older population or one who might be coming at their gym from a cardiac episode, anything like that. So what do we need to think about when we're looking at this population?
So I kind of really thought about this over the last couple of weeks in preparation of what are kind of those 5 things that some of them might be no-brainers, but I'll maybe go into them a little bit more. And then some of them I think are just really important because there's nuances to each and every one of them. So the first one is, and I think that we can all resonate with it, that we feel much younger than we are. We feel that we look and act, and it's very hard for us sometimes to go, oh my gosh, I remember when my grandmother turned 60, thinking like that she was like an old granny, and now I'm like 60 is super young. And so that really transformation of thinking about people's age, older adults are the same. They don't see themselves as old and decrepit, and they see themselves as young, vibrant beings. And it's just about them kind of finding their way back to that through fitness and exercise. So really about, strength and stamina. Those are the key things, and balance that they're looking for. But if we market to them as, hey, old fogies, time to come and exercise, it's not going to resonate with them. We do really have to think about that component of aspirational health, that, what is it that they believe they look like and want to feel like, and that's how we need to market to them. And it's we have to really ensure that the images, though, that they see are ones that resonate and hit them. They need to see themselves in gyms. If they see ads that are just young people in sports bras and spandex shorts, that's not going to resonate with them. In fact, that will repel them. So from a marketing sense, we just really have to understand that, they may be older, but we all feel like we're younger. So let's lock in on that. The second thing is that safety is the product. The number one thing that you'll hear from the older adults is they're looking for safety. Safety in programming, safety in facility, safety in social settings. Like they want to feel safe, meaning they don't want to feel intimidated, right? So safety has, again, a nuance in that it's not just about, oh, they want to know that like it's a safe neighborhood. No, that's not it. They need to feel safe in every aspect of it. They have to feel safe even from a membership agreement or contract standpoint. They really have to understand and know, because they're very afraid to commit and sign contracts. And they come from a generation that is like, oh my gosh, I'm not signing a contract, so it really has to be that we fully communicate, and that it's very clear what they're coming into, but also that what they experience, that they get that feeling right out of the gate of, I'm going to be taken care of and feel safe in this environment. So again, let's not market to old people. Let's make sure that we remember safety is the product. Number 3 is social connection is the driver of retention. And sure, we can say that throughout many generations, but this is a key generation. We have people who have lost their spouse. We have people who are literally coming at a time in their life where maybe something big has happened in their life. Maybe there's been a big transformational switch. Maybe it's that their kids have moved out of their home. Maybe it's that they've lost one of their good friends. Loss is part of this generation. And they really do actually use exercise as a healing capacity. But more than that, we also know that as we age, loneliness is a factor. And so social connection is so important in retention. But it's a key factor to consider that people are not attracted by social connection, but it is why they stay. So it's not a way to attract people of like, come here and you're going to make lots of friends. They're going to say to you, I don't need any more friends. I've got my family and friends. Like, I don't need anything more. But then what you find is that, what we see here at LiveWell is we have an exercise session, and those 12 members walk over to the coffee shop together and they have coffee, and it becomes their routine and their morning and really kind of their social anchor. And so social connection is the number one driver of retention. So again, we don't market to them as old people. Number 2, safety is a product. Number 3, social connection is retention. Number 4 is the sales cycle just takes longer. We have to be patient with this demographic. They are going to absolutely rebel against us if we have them come in for a session and lock them in an office to have a conversation, or we say, hey, before you leave, you have to make this decision and you're going to get this discount, or we're going to waive this fee if you do it. This generation needs the respect of a little bit more time. So we have to expect and respect that the sales cycle takes longer. And last but not least, results look different. It's not about performance and physique. It is truly about how do they live life to the fullest. I think back to when I worked at UBC in the student fitness gym, and my boss told me that I had to spend half of my work hours per week working in a seniors fitness program. And I thought, are you kidding me? I have this like sexy job working with athletes and students, and I teach boot camp and spin, and it's so much fun. And I have to go work with old people and exercise them. And for me, as I started to work those hours, I slowly recognized the value in working with those individuals, and that their reason and their why was actually much deeper. And it started to pull me more towards that demographic, because sure, I was working with the football players, and I was, running them through boot camp so that they could win their next game, get that next trophy, and they'd wake up the next morning to just win the next game and win the next trophy. But then here I am in a seniors fitness program, and I remember exercising this guy named Bob who had lost his wife, and his wife always walked their dog Clementine. And Bob just wanted to be able to walk Clementine again, but he didn't feel strong enough, that he had the stamina, that he had the balance even to be able to go for a walk, and in case this little dog pulled on him. And so his goal was to be able to go out and walk his dog. And he did these exercises, and eventually he was able to go out and walk Clementine. And as he went and walked Clementine, happens to be there was another older lady walking her dog who had lost her husband. And Bob ended up meeting Sandra, and Bob and Sandra a year later got married. And so these are the things that are much more meaningful, deeper connections that, they may sound like little silly stories, but to me, that was way more powerful than helping a football player win a game and a trophy. I know very important to that football player in that time, but in the big picture of life, I think that's the impact that we can make. So it's not about performance and physique. It is about living life to the fullest. So recap, let's not market to them as old people. Number 2, safety is the product. Number 3, social connection is retention. Number 4, respect, that the sales cycle is going to take longer. And number 5, that results are different. And we need to make sure that we're able to display that and also respect that in the demographic. So
love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of those details, Sarah. And so much of that resonates. I think, my own experience, I was at a crossroads early in my career, working with elite hockey players and also doing cardiac rehab. And, you really hit the nail on the head in terms of the impact that you can create in the lives of these folks. But increasingly, one of the things I don't think that I appreciated well enough early in my career in cardiac rehab was that social connection. And we now have all kinds of data that highlights the impact of social isolation, increasing risks for dementia, cognitive decline, cardiovascular disease, stroke, and so forth. And so, while, there is that element of, going for coffee together after the cardiac rehab experience, that community that is created is so critically important. And I don't think we can underestimate that. And I know that when I was early in my career, I didn't appreciate it as well as I should have. So thank you for highlighting that and, the other 5, or other 4 elements. So let's talk about the business model, a little bit. So you've often spoken about the cliff that patients can fall off of after they finish their hospital-based phase, 2 and 3 cardiac rehab programs. For a private fitness business, what does the most viable phase 4 cardiac rehab program business model look like?
Yeah, and so for those of you who may be hearing these phase words, or kind of what does all of this mean? When we look at kind of a journey specifically, and we're not going to talk all about cardiac rehab, but just specifically here, we'll kind of define it that phase 1 is really the intervention when something happens to somebody and they're, in the hospital having bypass surgery, for example. And then phase 2 and 3 are typically where they need kind of a high level of monitoring. And then phase 4 is usually when they are kind of then moving back into the community for supportive exercise. And I think that in order for us to realistically do this in a way that we gain the respect of the doctors, because that's the number one thing. If we don't have the respect of the doctors who are actually having their patients move into it, and that they feel like, oh yeah, if you go to this place, you're going to get the right care, then it's going to be really hard to support those individuals. And some fitness businesses will go, that's not the demographic that we want to see here. And that isn't the person that we want to serve. If they want to come here, they can come here, but if not, and that's okay. We all have to know who our clients are. So this isn't for everybody. But if we do want to see people coming out of cardiac rehab, again, what we need to understand is that they have come from a clinical setting that is usually hospital-based or a lot more healthcare of a setting. But they also have an exercise prescription that is highly curated and specific based on not only their cardiac needs, but also their medications. And the number one thing that we saw that broke the healthcare system's trust in typical gyms is when somebody would go to a gym and the trainer would say, okay, cool. So we're going to go 220 minus your age. Here's your heart rate, target heart rate zone. So here's what you're going to work at. I would say the number one thing that we need to do is we need to say, what was it that you were given in cardiac rehab and how can we help to support you with that in our setting, in our gym? Show me what the experts gave you and let us show you how you can do this here and be safe with it. Because when we had people come back to us in cardiac rehab and go, you told me that my heart rate could only be 100 to 120 during exercise. And I went to, this certain place and they told me on the chart that it could be 140 to 160. And then I tried to do that. I could never get my heart rate up to 140. Like, what's going on? I'm concerned. Well, they're on a beta blocker and they're never going to get their heart rate up to 140. So then we're giving ill advice. So I think we have to continue to work within the lanes that we are trained in and ensure that we can provide a seamless transition. But that means just like if someone comes with exercises from their physiotherapist from their torn rotator cuff that they rehabbed and all of this, we should be respecting and relying on some of that information. It's no different with cardiac rehab. Ask what they were doing and work that into their program, and don't go against the parameters that were laid out for them. There's reasons for that. And if you don't understand that, maybe this client is too complex for you to work with, right?
Brilliant. Brilliant as always. Let's talk about the typical cardiac patient, which, has changed a lot. We have seen heart conditions coming up in younger and younger adults and Canadians. And one of the stats this month that we reported in FitBiz Weekly was 8 million Canadians living with hypertension. So how does a gym segment marketing and even programming perhaps to reach the different age groups without alienating them?
Yeah, I think that, again, we have to know who our ideal client profile is. And then we really do have to kind of commit to that. I think that we can even broaden it just even from kind of cardiac to all clinical health conditions. We're seeing them occurring earlier and earlier, whether that be diabetes, osteoporosis, you name it. All of these clinical conditions are hitting people earlier. And some of that is awareness. Some of that is testing. Some of that is recognition. Some of that is mainstream media conversations of there's a lot of talk about bone health and lifting heavy for women and all of this. So there's a lot of things that play into people's awareness about their health. And I think that when we go to market to these individuals, again, when people have underlying health conditions, it's not about performance and physique. And you'll hear this probably reiterated many times throughout the hour, but it is truly about, understanding what life looks like for them and what are the things that are important for them to do. And they're not going to be the typical things that maybe we hear about in gyms. They may be things like, I had a lady write an email to us just the other day, and she said, the last 2 years of her exercising at Live Well have completely transformed her life, and she can now kneel and pray at church. And that may seem inconsequential for many people. That may seem like, oh my gosh, you took 2 years to get there. This woman really had to work towards that. And that was the most meaningful thing for her, right? And so I think that, again, we can look at all of these different health conditions. We can look at hypertension. We can look at, people who have prediabetes, metabolic disorders. And it's not necessarily that we want to market to those individuals about that specific condition, because people don't define themselves as that. If you are someone who has high blood pressure, you don't define yourself as, I am Mr. High Blood Pressure. You just have a name and you have these other priorities, and high blood pressure might be number 14 on your list of things that you think about in your daily life, but you're someone with high blood pressure, but probably your family and your work and your lifestyle are much higher. Those are the things that we have to look at when we're attracting those clients, because those are the things that they're trying to achieve and hold on to. Now, the clinical underpinnings of their health, that comes down to, again, as ensuring that our facilities and our programming is safe for those individuals. And I'm sure that we'll talk about kind of then what does that look like? Who are the types of staff that would work with those individuals? But I'll let us get to that question when it's time.
Awesome. LiveWell exercise clinics have successfully franchised in multiple provinces across Canada now, Sarah, which is absolutely outstanding. In that, consideration for, expanding, what would you say are perhaps 3 non-negotiable systems that a fitness business must have in place before they try to start scaling a clinical exercise program?
Yeah, so I think that franchising is something that doesn't happen overnight. People look at franchising as, oh, that's a cool thing. You just kind of put your business in a box and sell the box to somebody, they run it, and you make a royalty every month. But no, it's about supporting those people to be successful. The brand is still the brand,
Negotiate.
and it's important for everything to kind of flow down from the head office to the people who are delivering the business. So the first thing that I would say is that we need to work out the business. So we need to, I opened 3 locations on my own in 3 different regions to work out the kinks. I opened a location in my hometown where I knew a lot of people. That's where most people open a business, and you can be highly successful. And, honestly, it's the easiest place to open a business is in your own hometown. And most people stop there because it's close to home. People. If something happens at the location, you can just go there. And then I opened a location in Vancouver. That was about an hour drive. And I learned a lot from opening a location in a community I did not know. I did not know the healthcare providers there. I didn't know people who could come to that location. I didn't have, I had grown up in the White Rock South Surrey community. I knew a lot of people. I didn't know anybody. So there was new obstacles that I had to overcome and work out those kinks and figure out, how am I going to get these clients? And then I opened a 3rd location again to learn even more lessons. And I was given some really good advice in the early days, and that is that when you open multiple locations, and many of you listening today do own multiple locations, so this will resonate with you. But when you own multiple locations, it's like having a family in different homes that you have to feed, nourish, take care of, spend time with. But those families can never be in the same home. They all reside in their own home, and there will never, ever be overlap. But you need to keep them all healthy and going. And when you think of it that way, it's a very complex and huge undertaking. And you really have to figure out how to do all of those things in order to build the systems in place to have a successful business. And then it is all about the standardized care across the brand. All of us have experiences and examples of times where we've gone somewhere and felt like, okay, well, that was different than I had at this location, or that was different than the last time that I was here. But, you look at the really large successful brands, I'll even use a food brand like Tim Hortons, just as an example here, no matter where you go and order the what are the cold ice caps, these ice cap drinks. I'm sure they're the exact same across every Tim Hortons that you would ever go to, because they have a standard way that they do everything, that they make it. You always know that their drive-throughs are quick and all of this type of stuff. And so the way that that is done, though, is literally through writing everything down and having a really systemized approach. And again, anyone who owns multi-locations will understand that. But that was another thing that I really needed to make sure that I had. And then when it comes to clinical exercise, that's just kind of this added component of how do you ensure that the standard of care, the safety, the social connection, all of those things that we spoke about are consistent and provided. And to me, that comes down to core values and culture. And so that means that's creating the core values that lead the company, that all of the decisions are made through, and ensuring that the people who franchise and the people that they hire live out those values, and then it naturally trickles down. I would add as a little side one is, of course, having a referral scheme and referral network, an idea of how to do that and how to train people to do that. And I'm sure that we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's another strong component that has to happen when we are looking at clinical exercise. You have to have the buy-in from other allied healthcare professionals.
And I know that Erin's going to ask a question that will build on that, which is terrific. So what I'm hearing is, policies, procedures. Curious though, with this franchise model and clinical exercise, are you capturing and sharing some key performance indicator data that you are able to compare one location to another? And if so, what might some of the metrics be that you've learned are really important for success?
Yeah, I mean, we probably have very similar KPIs to every other fitness business, honestly. We closely follow our NPS, our Net Promoter Score. We look at, conversions from people who come in as leads, and, we offer a free session. How many people book the free session? How many people attend the free session? How many of those people register after the free session? And then we really closely monitor our attrition and retention. Again, I don't think that's different than any other fitness business, which is why, as much as at LiveWell we do clinical exercise, the framework for our business is the framework that builds any successful fitness business.
And I think that we want to go dive a little bit into the secret sauce, because when we were putting together this webinar idea, I think this is the thing that a lot of people watching and listening want to know. What's been your secret sauce on getting in with doctors, GPs, hospitals? Is it knocking on doors? Is it postcard campaigns? Like how have you made such a success out of it? And what can facilities learn from you?
Mm-hmm. So, when I first opened 15 years ago, I came from a 10-year career in cardiac rehab, and I knew the doctors in my community from working in the hospital for 10 years, literally walking in the halls with them. They referred their patients. We wrote consult notes back to them. And then I started LiveWell, and I still had that credibility with the local group of doctors, saying that doctors forget very easily, and anything that's new is behavior change. And heck, in exercise, we're good at behavior change. And this was about teaching doctors how to refer exercise and looking at it from the perspective of this is a change for them. Doctors are very regimented, and they see, 40 patients a day, and they only have several minutes for a patient, and they do this and this and this. And we have to ensure that we are able to work our way into that process and support a doctor through making the changes in their routine, in their behaviors, so that they can start to introduce exercise and making that as easy as possible. And so, sure, when I opened up in my hometown, easy peasy. It was like in the first couple of weeks, they invited me to their annual physician dinner and gave me 5 minutes to speak and said, great, when can we start sending people your way? But that's where then the challenge, when I opened in Vancouver, I didn't know any doctors. And what I also found was that in my hometown, all of the doctors were highly connected. They were a community themselves. They met, they had these dinners, they had these meetings. here I go into Vancouver, and no kidding, the doctors didn't even know each other in the clinic. They didn't even know each other's names who worked in the same clinic. They went into the underground parking, got in their cars, and drove out to the suburbs in different places where they all lived. They never even really spoke to each other. It was also the era of walk-in clinics galore, right? So literally there was like medical clinics that were called stations and hubs, and they sounded like train stations. You walk in, you see a doctor, you walk out, and 2 hours into the day, all the doctors have seen their maximum and they're closed, right? So for me, it was a lot of learning as how do I engage these physicians, even get time with them. And so for me, I thought the best people to learn from were pharma reps. They were the masters at it. They were trained in it. Their organizations put millions of dollars into how to train these individuals. And so I actually, kind of befriended many pharma reps. And because I approached this as exercise was not a competition to the drug that they were pushing in the doctor's office. In fact, exercise in Canada is first-line therapy for most chronic health conditions. So how amazing would it be for you as a pharma rep to bring me first-line therapy and give the doctor a little bit of a talk about that, and then say if first-line therapy doesn't work, here then you can prescribe our medication. It gave them a different angle, and it gave them something unique to go into, which is all of them were looking for something unique to go into. So I was unique. And so I came in with the pharma reps to the doctors. And so I got this walk-in introduction to go in and meet with the doctors, to learn how they spoke with them, to follow up with the doctors. I think where the pharma reps may be underestimated was that they kind of thought, well, we'll bring exercise in, but we know that most people aren't going to exercise or stick with it. But what we found is that when the doctor did tell the patient to exercise, they did come, that about 85% of those people did register and they did stick with it. And so that process became really, really impactful in me learning how it is that you have to speak to a doctor, the frequency that you have to go in. And so I want to, I'm sorry that I need to do this, but I want to kind of draw a line in the sand of there's pre-COVID doctor engagement and there's post-COVID doctor, or nowadays doctor engagement. And I'm talking about kind of pre-COVID engagement. And so every day I would make a time of going to doctor's offices for 2-3 hours and walking around and just trying to see a couple doctors. It is time consuming, but you do have to look at one doctor has thousands of patients, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 patients. They're the gateway to so many people. So it's worth investing in that individual in order to empower them to access patients. I, then actually sat on the pharmaceutical board in British Columbia as a non-pharma rep, because I got so involved in this, and we started to host huge events for doctors where pharmaceutical companies funded them, gave doctors their continuing education credits, and I went as the MC for the event. Pharma reps weren't allowed to do that because there was so much legislation, but I was exercise. And so I was allowed to kind of be the MC for the event, and therefore really be around, 100, 200, sometimes 300 doctors who were there for a 1 or 2 day event. Further to that, I also wanted to crack the nut even more. So a bit crazy, but I decided to open a medical clinic. So I opened a medical clinic with 5 GPs and 3 specialists, because I now wanted to learn not only how do you approach the physician, but what are all of the workings in the back office that happen that we can make sure that we infiltrate from an exercise as medicine or exercise prescription standpoint in order to get physician buy-in and to make it easier and easier and easier for doctors. And so what I came up with is that, doctors are used to identifying that somebody is not on target for something. And then doctors do not like to talk about money, and doctors like to give a gift. And that's why doctors give samples, because they go into their cupboard and they go, hey, I want to give you this medication. They don't want to talk about how much the medication costs. They don't want to talk about that it could be expensive. They don't want to talk about, is this covered by your benefits or not? I don't care. you're off target, here's your sample. And so I thought, okay, off target, here's your sample, off target, here's your sample. How can we simplify this for doctors to just weave exercise into it? So I started to work with the doctors in my clinic to simply just ask, and without worrying about who is the patient. Should I ask the patient? What patient should I ask? Ask everybody. Are you on target? Do you get 150 minutes of exercise in every single week on a consistent basis? If the answer is no, you have to provide them a sample of exercise. The sample of exercise is go for your free trial at this gym, go for your free thing here, go for your free thing. Everyone offers something free. Give your patient the opportunity to make their best choice, but it starts with something free. And so that was really the framework that I started to use and build up. And that started to work really well because it took away from the physicians going, well, I mean, but how much does it cost to come to your program? Because, oh gosh, I don't want to talk about that. And I get asked all these questions, and no, it's a sample. You're giving them a free sample. They can go and take it or they cannot. We already know that for people who are prescribed medications, less than half of patients actually adhere to their medication. We don't expect that people are going to be perfect with this, but we needed to get doctors talking about it. So we just process was, are they on target? Yes or no? If not, provide them a free sample.
Love it. Really brilliant model, and we continue to hear that trust in the relationship, between the medical community and the fitness community, it could certainly be a lot better. The model and the approach that you've taken provides everybody listening here with an approach that they could consider. But so much of that is built around, providing that evidence-based, model built around guidelines and, really creating that trusting relationship. And everything you've heard, I can echo, I've heard as well. And, love the approach that you've taken there. So thinking again about, the business model and that approach, when we think about risk stratification, the clientele that we're providing services to in this instance are, higher risk individuals. And clinical exercise, in this kind of model requires higher supervision, smaller ratios. So maybe it's a, 1-to-6 or 1-to-8. How do you price these services to remain accessible to patients while maintaining a healthy margin for your business compared to traditional personal training services?
Yeah. So it really has to be a bit of a middle ground, Again, if safety is the product, then people pay for value. They don't pay for a membership. They don't pay for a service. They pay for value, right? And so we have to ensure that they receive what they're expecting. And the number one thing is safety. So I would say that, again, this field of clinical exercise physiology that, when I started when I first got certified 25 years ago, I was, I think, the third or fourth person in BC to have the certification. Now we have thousands of people across Canada with the certification, whether they're acting professionally in that or just hold the certification and have gone on to other things. We have so many people more that are certified. We also now have universities that are teaching the curriculum in undergraduate programs. So for example, in BC, we have UBC Okanagan that actually people are receiving degrees in kinesiology with a specialization in clinical exercise physiology. They'll be graduating their first cohort this year, and these students are learning exactly how to work with people with clinical populations. The reason that I bring that up is because as our universities are now pumping out more of these students, they are more available to us to hire. And so, what I would say typically is that someone who has a personal training or even is a general kinesiologist, they're typically not certified or insured to work with someone who's not apparently a healthy individual. So we do have to ensure that we are putting the right people with the right people. I think that as an industry, we harm ourselves when we go, okay, yeah, no, like you have diabetes, but like, that's okay. Like, I'm sure that's not a big deal. I can work with you anyways. Like, I know someone who has diabetes. Working with people with clinical health conditions comes with a lot of risk and comes with a lot of knowledge, specifically to understand when they present to exercise and they have symptoms that you have to identify. I'll give an example of this that we did some research on several years ago, was patients that report to exercise reporting that they've gained some weight and that they're feeling fatigue. A typical personal trainer would go, okay, like, so over the weekend, you felt a little bit tired, you've gained some weight, like, let's hit the workout and have a good one and kind of get back on track, right? The clinical mindset goes to, wait, you felt a little bit of fatigue over the weekend and you gained some weight. Let's understand that a little bit more. You could actually be maybe potentially going into heart failure. Again, we can't diagnose, but we can start to have this assessment and this curiosity. And when we're actually able as a clinician to intercept and say, hey, these sound like some symptoms that could be indicative of heart failure, and congestive heart failure is literally just extra load of water or fluid on the heart. And the heart's therefore kind of a saggy pump, not working efficiently. It's a super easy intervention. They get put on a water pill and they pee out the extra fluid. It's a really, really simple thing that they can go to their doctor, go to emergency, go wherever they need to go and have an intervention that is very, very cost effective and fast. Should we ignore those symptoms and have someone continue in that even just for several days? The average cost once they're admitted to the hospital is over $120,000. So and can be life-threatening. And so these are the clinical curiosity questions and moments that we have to have that can come from very simple things. That's the difference between working within your scope and working out of your scope. So again, it's an apparently healthy individual and then someone who has any type of chronic diagnosis, even including hypertension, I see it all the time. And this is where our industry damages itself, is that we go and we work with someone with hypertension and we have them doing exercises that involve, exertion like overhead lifts and shoulder presses. And, anyone with hypertension should be absolutely not lifting or exerting themselves above heart level. And so, or putting their head down and being in a plank with their feet on the ball. None of those types of exercises should happen. But if we don't have the knowledge to do that, we actually then, that person ends up going back to their doctor with an episode. Okay, well, how did this happen at my gym? Now we build mistrust in our healthcare system. So identifying who you're hiring, looking for those people out there who do have that clinical experience and designation, whether it's a CSEP CEP or an ACSM CEP, these people are around, they are hireable, they are being pumped out more and more from our universities. And it's only going to escalate over the next couple of years as universities are working very, very hard to educate people in this field. So I know it's not a simple answer, but it is probably the most appropriate and being on the right side of insurance.
Yeah. Well,
so how do you,
sorry, I was just going to
add
add,
in?
sorry, Erin, I was just going to add that, one of the things that, that clinical environment does that you highlighted with regards to, seeing that patient on a regular basis is so important for near miss avoidances. So
Yes.
without the clinical exercise and I think the Medical Fitness Association in the U.S. published a report last year highlighting that for every dollar invested, it saves $1.70 in terms of healthcare costs. So, that's such an important thing, and you really can't get that unless you have these small, ratios of staff to clientele.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to ask, because let's say an operator is listening, how do you know the ratio? How do you know how many people you should be hiring compared to sort of your fun sort of average trainers? Like how many really qualified cardiac specialists, sort of medically qualified staff do you need to have, do you think, on hand?
I think it's about knowing how you're screening people and how many people that you're screening that have hypertension and have these known health concerns. What level of clientele are coming to your business, and are these the types of clients that you want to serve? And if you do, you can continue with your services of offering one-on-one and small group training with these clinicians. And again, you can likely charge more than what you charge in typical personal training and in typical small group settings, although you don't want to make it that it's a kind of a punishment that people have these different health concerns, but you do sometimes, like, you do have to pay a clinical exercise physiologist more than somebody who's taken a general personal training course, for example. So I'll give those polar opposites. But yeah, I think that, each business can work within their services and identify how many of these people, like for us, it's all that we hire, but that's because every single person that we see is in that demographic. Someone might have one at a facility. Some people might be like, that's absolutely not who we're serving here, and we do high intensity exercise only, and that's great, no problem.
Sara, what about extended healthcare, and coverage for clinical exercise in Canada? What success have you had, and are there any specific magic words or certifications that help clients get reimbursed for these services?
Well, Ontario is an easy one because it is a regulated profession through kinesiology. So anybody who comes to a gym and a service and somebody is a registered kinesiologist, then that is something that they can not only put on their extended health, but they can also write off on their taxes on line 33099. Outside of that, in other provinces, we are seeing a little bit more of an appetite for a conversation. We are seeing a little bit more of just kinesiology being put on extended plans, even in provinces where it's not a regulated profession. And, we have pseudo regulation bodies of, kinesiology associations in the other provinces. And sometimes it means kind of being part of those but the insurance companies, they are opening their minds to this. If you are working specifically in clinical exercise and you do have those qualified people working in your facility, then using the word exercise therapy is a key term required when you are talking to extended health companies. That was a nice quick answer.
That was a good quick answer. So what about some add-ons? Because now let's go into sort of the nitty-gritty of this, right? Like, what are some of the opportunities that if a facility is going to branch out or change a little some of their model to be more of a cardiac clinic, what are some of the other add-on opportunities, financial opportunities that there might be, like nutrition, stress?
Yeah. And again, I think that just even like removing the word cardiac and thinking of just clinical exercise, all of these health conditions, heart is just one component of it. And even at LiveWell now, I mean, heart disease is 15% of our clientele. So, I mean, this is a huge population of people with clinical health conditions, right? And so, what does it look like in terms of add-ons and different features? I think, first of all, we really have to understand this demographic. And this demographic is typically people who have doctor's appointments. They have lots of things going on. Typically, they're going to be in a retired group of individuals or age category. They typically are grandparents and have grandchildren. They typically are at a stage in life where they travel a lot. All of these things have to be considered in how does your fitness business and membership work for those types of individuals. But saying that, when we start to layer things on and add extra visits, or effort, we can sometimes have the reverse effect. And so it's interesting because when we used to, so we have a minimum at LiveWell that people must commit for 1 year out of the gate for 2 days a week. Okay. We used to have that people had the option, they could choose 2 or 3 days a week. And people would come in gung ho and like, oh yeah, I'm committing for 3 days a week. That's what I need. Awesome. And we actually saw a significant turnaround in the clients who had committed to 3 days a week versus 2 days a week. And we didn't see those people go, ooh, I bit off more than I could chew. I want to go to the 2 days. They went from 3 to 0. And so we really want to make sure that we're not, that we're adding things on in a timing that is right, because people come in hungry and highly motivated and highly confident. But we know that as everything settles out, they kind of get back to life and go, oh my gosh, I really bit off more than I could chew. And we don't want them to quit. So understanding what is it that we can embed in what they're already coming to, rather than adding on top of that in terms of time. So what are the things that we can do and just build into the cost? Again, older adults, they're looking for something simple. They're very afraid of gyms having hidden fees. And what is the initiation, and what's the annual fee, and what are the things you're not telling me, right? They want transparency on all of that. And so as much as possible, being able to build something into their membership, whether it's that there's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3, that maybe level 2 has where they get, an assessment every so often, and that's built into the price. And, level 3 has where they get an assessment and they get, 3 one-on-one sessions or something like that built into that package. But including everything actually into the same package is going to get you the most traction with these individuals, instead of having add-on prices. Now, yes, the demographic is interested in nutrition. We have to be very careful. This isn't something that we can just use a PN nutrition course for or anything. This is clinical conditions, therefore clinical dietetics and nutrition is often necessary. We can share the underlying principles of it. So at LiveWell, we've made master classes that our members can participate in. What we found is that having online self-led things that people can do at home is the best way for people to engage in these. So in person, in the facility, people don't want to come in more than they are. And if you push it, you might actually have the reverse effect. Give people the ability to be at home in a non-threatening environment, to work through things at their own pace. And if you have a charge for that, then people are happy to pay it, because they can just a la carte choose those things.
And you know what, before Jack jumps into his question, I'm cross-pollinating our webinars, because Paul Bedford mentioned something in terms of attracting a new member, and they're looking at like 2 visits in a month, right? To make sure that if someone is brand new out of the gates, because you do get overwhelmed, right? You do. Right. And I can only imagine that if you have never ever exercised before, someone coming to a LiveWell, that potential for overwhelm is even higher. Sorry, Zach, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's a great point that you raise, Erin. And, another one of the elements I think that Paul Bedford raised for success with new members is related to how clinical programs often work. And that's, it's scheduled class time. So it's very much, the new member knows what date, what time they're going. Whereas, at a traditional gym, that may be entirely left up to the individual to determine when they go or if they just don't go. So that's one of the, I think, really important aspects of a clinical program, is that people are scheduled. There's a community that they connect in with, and it's not left to chance. As I often reflect, my dad was a doctor and, didn't practice what I preached, for example, and had a heart attack. And he used to say that when he had the urge to exercise, he would lay down and wait for that urge to go away. My dad and I were almost polar opposites in terms of exercise and so forth. And so when he did have his heart attack, I did enroll him in a cardiac rehab program in his community. And it was remarkable. He lost over 80 pounds and reversed his diabetes and so forth. But having that scheduled time and day of the week and so forth, so important. And your data, Sarah, is so good to see. So on that kind of medical note, we often mention this term exercise is medicine, that ACSM has really, been advocating, for 20 years. It was 2006, I think, that exercise is medicine first started with ACSM. How should a fitness business change its internal language? For example, as I just mentioned, should we be using the terminology of members versus patients and coaches versus clinicians? How do we best align, in your opinion, with the medical community to build that trust and success?
So I think that, again, people want to be people. They don't want to be patients. So using the friendly terms like members or clients or whatever you would typically do resonates a lot more, because we truly are, as we transition healthcare more into the community, it does become more of kind of that wellness umbrella, right? And so we do want to have the really inclusive language of members and clients and so forth. When it comes to the staff, I do think that if you have somebody who is certified in CSEP or ACSM certified, you should use the word clinician, because that resonates with the medical community to say this is someone credible. Unfortunately, the term personal trainer scares a lot of doctors, and in a survey around across doctors, they said that they wouldn't refer to a personal trainer because they didn't know or trust what that person was going to do, and the entry level to call yourself a personal trainer was completely unknown to them. And we can have amazing personal trainers who have solid backgrounds and solid knowledge in university educations, and we can also have personal trainers who go out there and do some type of online course and then go out there and practice. And because we have that spectrum, if we want to build credibility in this area, we have to hire the right people and then call them the right thing and communicate that back to the healthcare professionals.
So magic wand, if you could go back in time, start over, do 3 things differently. With all that you know now, what would you do?
I think that I wish that I had known, when I started LiveWell, I came from the clinician side. I came from the healthcare hospital setting side. And I didn't necessarily recognize that I was a fitness business. So I kind of came from the other direction, right? And I wish that I had, from the early days, more educated myself in what are the unit economics and what are the KPIs of the fitness business, so that I knew how to marry that with my clinical business and drive business. Saying that I was lucky in that we were an early player and that we had that success, but I didn't have those measuring tools to really understand and to kind of know what I was moving towards and what my goals were. The second thing is that I wish that I had really done a better deep dive into who the mindset of what my customer profile was, and really understanding their pain points and then marketed out of that. I think it's really easy for us to market services and products and that type of thing, but I wish that I had understood the power behind understanding what someone's discomfort is and what the solution is they're looking for, and marketing into their mindset of that. The third thing that is just maybe like more personal is I wish that I had just believed in myself more. I came from, again, a place of being a clinician. As I moved into business, I joke that I had no business being in business. I had no business degree, business courses, no nothing. I built street cred and that was it. But along the way, I did meet people who convinced me that I was only a clinician and that I didn't understand the business side of things, and that they could really come in and help. And I should outsource my marketing, I should outsource my finance, I should outsource all of these things because I'm a clinician. And when COVID hit and I had to lay off everyone in my US and Canada head office, and literally we whittled it down to 2 people, and we had to learn how to do everything. We had to learn all of our marketing, all of our advertising, all of our sales. We had to revamp everything. We had to learn, dive into all of our books and see who we owed money to, when, where, and how the heck are we going to pay all of this off. we had to figure all of that out. I learned, you know what, I'm a damn good business person. And it took me a while to figure that out. That I don't need to believe the stories. I'm just a clinician, but that, actually I am a business person and I understand all of those aspects of it. And, I sit here 15 years later and having survived COVID in the fitness industry, which all of us know if we're sitting here, it's just a miracle to be alive. That you have to be a good person. And so I wish I had believed in myself earlier that I was that. So yeah.
Oh my God, you're the best person. I've been like sitting here thinking how great it would be. You know the way how they have, I'm going to use a weird analogy, how they have like McDonald's and Walmarts? Like there almost needs to be a live well inside of large HVLPs and what have you, like a mini live well that caters. So that might be your next an extension of the live
Or
well
live
model,
wells at
Sarah.
McDonald's. McDonald's
Right?
and live wells. Eh? Combo.
You are, Carl just said you were amazing, Sarah.
No, he
Truly.
didn't say that.
Did so. He said it in the
No.
chat.
Yeah,
He said it in the chat. You are
Carl
amazing, Sarah.
Ulmer says that you're amazing, Sarah, and we all agree. And I would add that you're a pioneer, too, in
Yeah.
terms of what you've done is very complementary to the healthcare system, but you're doing it through the fitness world. And doing it in a way that is, has some similarities, but you've taken the best components of it, refined that model, and for everyone here, and those watching on YouTube, once we upload it, greatly benefit from, the experience that you have, paved the way for. And also, of course, the work that you've done as president of the FIC, navigating, probably, without question, the most difficult time when fitness facilities across Canada were closed for over 400 days. Not an easy task. So, from all of us, thank you. Thank you for your work as leader and president of the FIC. And thank you for sharing with us today. I know we're a little bit over time, but if anyone has any questions, would be happy to offer time for maybe 2 questions before we wrap things up.
We'll keep it live. And I will add, Sarah, that like from having done these webinars for such a long time, there was just, and I learned, and knowing you as well as I do, I learned probably 10 new things today, at
Awesome.
least. So that's saying something in terms of the content that you're able to provide to us, which is just huge, huge. I don't think we have any questions, Zach.
Well, you've
covered it all.
answered, Sarah has answered everybody's questions. And, so we greatly appreciate everybody being here today. And we'll conclude there. So thanks, everyone. And
Thanks,
we'll
everyone.
see you for our next one.
Thanks, everyone.